Okay, so let's first move on. So just encourage everybody when you're about to speak during the meeting, if you could use your microphone, and hopefully that will encourage good order as well, which of course as chairman, I'm always in favour of. So let's start off with the apologies. I've had apologies from Councillor Shatu and Councillor Dale. Are there any other apologies? Okay. Any items which the chair deems urgent? I've not been notified of any other items. No? Okay. Disclosure of interest and dispensations. Do members have any interest or dispensations that they need to declare at the start of the meeting? No. Okay. So I'm going to change the order a little bit that is printed on our agenda, just to facilitate the people who are going to be here at particular times. So the first item that we're going to move on to is the cycling strategy. So if I could ask Cllr Williams to come up, and I mean, you know the format, Mark, because you used to be in this committee previously. I think the timing of this is really good for us because we have the cycling strategy that has been published, and we're in a consultation on that document now. So I think this is an opportunity for every member of this committee to give their input, tell Mark exactly what they think of the document, and also to give detailed input, particularly on any board-related issues that you might have with regard to cycling, any suggestions you have for the cycle routes. So I think that the door is open to input as many ideas as possible, but I'll hand over to Mark to give an introduction.
Thank you, Chair. So we used to be on this side of the table. So our cycling strategy, which we just talk a little bit about the history and where the cycling strategy came from, where we're up to at the moment, and then how I see things developing over the next year or two. So at the local elections this year, we had a manifesto commitment to bring over Dutch and Danish expertise to help us improve our cycling plans, improve what we're doing on cycling, and learn from best practice on the continent, because what's the point in reinventing the wheel? And we had what was known as a kickstand session, where we had two experts each from the Netherlands and Denmark, with staff from right across the council, from every department of the council. We also had people from external groups such as Southwark Cyclists, Wilson Wellbeing, a disability cycling charity based down in Herne Hill, various other people, the police, Transport for London, and myself and Councillor Hargrave there as well. And basically what it did is kind of lift up the eyes of everybody working on cycling in and around Southwark about what we can achieve and what we should be aiming for if we're going to hit our target of getting up to 10% modal share by 2025-2026. There was loads of ideas. A lot of energy came out of that meeting, so we decided that rather than just standard with workshops, you leave it and move on, that off the back of that we'd pull together a cycling strategy of all the work that's being done across the council, what our plans are for the future, and then say to people who live in Southwark and people who cycle across Southwark and people who cycle to Southwark, what do you think of our plans, what could we be doing extra? Key part of that is unlocking a cycling grid and a safe cycling network across the borough, which is one of our manifesto commitments in the local elections this year. And we've come up with what we think is our first route, which is the Southwark Spine route, which runs from Crystal Palace through Dulwich, Peckham, skirts around Camberwell, up through Woolworth, and then links in with the proposed north-south cycle superhighway just north of the Elephant and Castle, which is the first of many routes. It's saying to people, one, what do you think of this route? And secondly, where would you like to see cycling improvements made in the borough from an infrastructure point of view? There's the consultation website, so cycling strategy. That's an online map where you can go on and drop pins and comments about what you want to change. There's an online questionnaire. People can email the transport team with more detailed comments if they wish. Whilst all that's going on, our transport policy team are undertaking a full network analysis of every road in the borough, which we haven't done before, using a London Roads Task Force typology. I've got that right, which basically looks at every road in the borough and says, well, what's this road actually for? Is it a main road? Is it a side road? Is it a quiet road? Is it a home zone, as it were? And then we'll pull that information together and come up with an ideal kind of cycling grid map for the borough, which we'll adopt in the final strategy when that comes to Cabinet in March of next year. And then we'll start delivering against that, the first of those being the Southwark Spine route. There's obviously some of the most quiet way routes and cycle superhighways which happen at the same time. And then, then crack on and deliver. There's also, because it's not just about infrastructure, I was in Naples earlier this year. They've got loads of cycling infrastructure, but no one cycles because it's not very safe. So we need to make the roads safer. So we're at 20 mile/h borough, that's being rolled out at the moment, should complete by Christmas. And we're also looking at education, training, communications, etc., that we can do to get more people cycling, looking at cycling loan schemes, and basically every way we can to encourage people to cycle and be safe cycling, taking that twin track approach. And that comes to Cabinet in March next year, and we'll adopt it. So if anyone's got any comments, please do either tell me now, tell the officers now, and we'll take this on board. We'll send this detailed comments through, and we'll work that. We want it to be as an extensive consultation as possible. And the kind of key lobby group in my mind, and it's a non-existent lobby group, is people who don't currently cycle, who could cycle, because that's how we're going to get to our 10% target. Obviously, we've got to make the road safe for people who cycle at the moment, myself included, but we've got to make it safe enough and straightforward enough that people who currently don't cycle will cycle and take up cycling, because that's how we'll meet our targets, and to make sure that's from people from as many different backgrounds and age groups as possible, so we can benefit the benefits, to as wide a part of our population as possible. I'll stop talking now, I could go on for hours, but maybe we've got other business this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. So I've had one indication so far, but I encourage as many members as possible to indicate. I'm going to cheekily kick off with one quick question, which is more just to set the context of the discussion. This is called a cycling strategy, and it sets out a number of ideas. I think it's particularly good in the way that it brings together a number of best practice examples from across the country and also internationally as well. It does strike me very much as a discussion document, a document that's intended to prompt discussion, which may well have been your intention. Could you just tell us a little bit more about the status of the document? There are some proposals in here to do certain things, which you would expect from a strategy, but there's also a lot more information about suggested options, and we've got the question marks next to a number of things because you're saying we need more information about those things. So is this a discussion document for consultation which will produce a strategy, or is it a strategy already?
It's a little bit of both. So there's concrete plans in there that we're setting out, for example, the spine route. There's also the double Dutch roundabout down at Fountain Drive down in Crystal Palace. A number of other schemes that are currently happening or that will happen, but it's also saying to people across the borough, what else should we be doing to increase cycling? We're not the font of all knowledge. What do people think? Where are the improvements people want to see? Where are the routes that need to be unblocked? So there will be, when we adopt the final strategy in March next year, a very clear action plan saying, these are all the ideas, this is what we're going to be doing, and this is our target date for when that's going to happen by. Very much. And one of the things I forgot to mention, which is kind of linked to this, is coming up with an ideal cycling network grid map isn't just a good thing to do in itself to help guide our work, but that will be backed up in planning policy through the new Southwark plan, because there's a line in there that says future developments must deliver the cycling grid as set out in cycling strategy. So when new developments come forward in the future where we've identified those gaps and those blockages in the network at the moment, they'll have to go and conduct as part of planning applications coming forward. So there'll be our own work and our own investment, but then there'll be other work in the future through development. So it's a bit of both, if that's the question.
So, Rose.
Thanks very much for that introduction. I just had a couple of quick questions about the funding that kind of backs up the strategy. I noticed on page, I think it's 60 of the strategy, you referred to there being £2 million ring fence for cycling. I just wondered if you could give us a bit more detail on what that money is set to deliver. So is that £2 million specifically for the delivery of the strategy, or to support all cycling across the borough? And then is that £2 million in total, or is that £2 million of additional funding on top of what might have otherwise been spent on cycling this year or in previous years?
Well, obviously it's quite a difficult funding time at the moment with massive cuts we've had from central government, which is less than helpful. But the £2 million was set aside by the previous administration prior to May 2014, and that's £500,000 a year. Some of that money's been rolled over, so next financial year, if I remember correctly, we're about £900,000, and that money will go towards paying for basically the things you identify through the cycling strategy. One of the main ones of those will be the changes that will need to be made to our road network for the Southwark spine. There's also other pots of money that we're tapping into as well through the local improvement programme from Transport for London, the LIT funding. We get just over £3 million a year from that, and there's a number of schemes in there that will be beneficial for cyclists. For example, the £100,000 discretionary fund, which I think the IDM is pending at the moment through the constitutional process. I've allocated, if memory serves me correctly, £15,000 or £20,000, which will be match funded by TfL, which will, for a scheme delivered through the London Cycling Campaign, where people who are interested in cycling pay £10 or £20 deposit. they get a bike and all the equipment for 4 weeks, and at the end of those 4 weeks, if they don't want the bike, they can hand the bike back. If they want to buy it, they can, and that has a huge amount of take-up, and people then got to cycle who didn't. So there's a number of funding streams, but the main part is £2 million set aside and approved by the previous administration prior to May, and £500,000 a year, and that's mainly for improvements in the strategy.
Yeah, go.
Sorry, I've just got one quick follow-up to that. So again, I understand from the strategy that the spine is very much the kind of priority, and that would be the first thing that you'll be looking to deliver. And so in light of the, obviously the, I suppose the limited, but well, ring-fenced funding, I just wondered if you've got any estimates as yet as to how much it might cost to deliver the spine, and further to that, I suppose, what might be left over to deliver the other elements of the strategy, because I'm just conscious there's a lot of really ambitious things in here, and obviously want the funding to stretch as far as possible.
Absolutely. So the Southwark spine route at the moment, that's being costed up, and we'll have more information on that at the start of next year. The final route of the Southwark spine isn't set in stone. I've been, for example, had correspondence from college ward councillors who are interested in going down a slightly different route, which they think might work better than the one that's been suggested in the draft plan. So we're going to look at those. If anyone's got any other suggestions, please let us know. So we haven't got a final cost on that yet, but it is being worked up. But there's other money available as well. For example, through planning gain, take the Elephant Castle as an example. There's going to be significant amounts of segregation improvements and bypass routes, etc., and then which we pay for through the planning process and investment that we've levered in through Transport for London for wider transport improvements at the Elephant. So there's a number of different funding streams. Obviously, the Quiet Way money as well. We've got about 1.5 million for the route that goes east-west through the borough at the moment, and we're hoping that the more schemes that we can get planned, that we can go to Transport for London. And even though we're not a mini Holland, because the 4 boroughs that are mini Holland states have got £30 million each, which we'd love to have. Hopefully we can go to Transport for London, and hopefully they might give us additional funding, because we are taking this extremely seriously, using as much of our own resources as we can. But obviously, we'd always welcome more money from Transport for London or indeed central government.
That's great.
Oh.
Thanks, Gavin. Thanks, Mark. First of all, I mean, there's loads in here that looks great. I'm particularly impressed by exchanging places. The idea of cyclists and HGV drivers getting perspective on jumping point of view is clearly useful, and the rentals idea as well of giving people a chance to try out cycling is great. Just in terms of, I mean, you used to wear the skirts around Camberwell for the route, and as you know, as Camberwell Councillor, I'm looking at it, and just wondering what measures you'll have in place to encourage people from Camberwell onto this route when it is quite a distance from, say, people travelling to Kings, for example, and that it's very, as you know, with an east-west cycling superhighway, which is proposed by TfL. We even have a couple of cycling cafes that opened along that route that we're expensing it, and so just wonder what your thoughts are on getting people east to west as well as north to south, and from Camberwell onto this route.
So with the Southwark spine, what we sorry that. So there's the Southwark spine route, which runs pretty much the whole length of the borough. There's the existing plans, which we consult on in the not too distant future for one of the Mayor's Quiet Ways, which will run through Camberwell. It's one of the current things will go down Camberwell Grove, Ridge Road, rather, Benall Road, Edmund Street, go across the park and go at Portland Street. So we didn't want to copy what's already being done. So we've got that route there. We'll have our route, which is a little bit further to the east, and then potentially another route. So I see, at the end of the day, we want 3 or 4 of these routes running north, south, and east, west. So we've got this grid across the borough in one form or another. It doesn't matter where you're going from or to, there's a safe route for you to get there. On the east-west routes, there's the Quiet Way, which is being consulted on at the moment, which runs from Greenwich through to Waterloo. Further down the borough now, part of the world down in Camberwell, there was the proposed cycle superhighway down in Queen's Road, Peckham Road, Camberwell Church Street, and if I remember correctly, just down by the former Wooddean estate, it changes from being blue paint, which means it's a cycle superhighway, to being green paint, which doesn't really seem to have a status anymore. And when I raised this with TfL, they said basically they were putting the cycle superhighway in, they couldn't make it safe enough, but they felt they had to do something. So from my point of view, is obviously we want to make that as safe as possible, and we'd like to see some investment going in, because that's a key east-west route. It's heavily used, heavily trafficked. potential route for cyclists getting across. There's the plans that TfL are bringing forward for further up near the Oval, and we'd hope that this could be one of those routes that would be brought in there. So we're very much hoping for Transport for London to bring forward a scheme, and it has been delayed, and that is very disappointing. We've got a site visit actually this Friday to talk about improvements around Camberwell Junction more generally, which is in your ward council, and we'll be raising that with TfL officials there about what's happening, what's the plan, because it's just not good enough that it's kind of got a bit tricky and they stopped over in London Lucy ward area, because we really need that connection all the way through. And as for the cycle cafes and Brunswick Park wards, they're absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. I have to say I'm slightly confused about whether this is an actual consultation document. I mean, it is full of lots of really, really good ideas, but I'm not quite sure what we're asking people to do with it and how we're asking them to do it. So if you'll clarify that, and then which may take you a short amount of time. But I have a second question, which is that actually we're very lucky in Cathedral and Chaucer and sort of up in the north, because we are going to have two cycle super highways. We've got the quiet ways, which goes east-west, and then the next road down we'll have the spine route, and then the next route down across Rockingham Street is the CS7, the one that goes around the Elephant, and then of course the Elephant is getting reconfigured. So, you know, I'm sorry that we've got quite a lot of there, but I find it very helpful. I wanted to know what your views were and what your input had been on the cycle super highway bit and the Elephant Castle, because obviously there are lots of concerns that have been raised by residents as pedestrians in the Blackfriars Road bit of it, but cyclists in terms of the Elephant Castle, the St George's Road roundabout, and then sort of a couple of the other bits along the way. So I just wondered what your feedback had been into TfL about that.
So on the cycling strategy itself as a document, we're basically saying to people, tell us what you think about the whole document and each individual idea in here, and is there anything that we've missed? Please tell us. Consultation's only just started and it runs till 7th of February. Thereabouts, off the top of my head. So there's plenty of time. We've got a very detailed programme going around to the future. And if there's anyone that you'd like myself or officers to go and speak to, any tenants group, for example, please let us know and go and speak to them. But basically, it's just people's views on the whole draft strategy, what additionally should be in there, yeah, about each of the detailed ideas. On the cycle superhighway at Blackfriars Road and at the Elephant, if I start on Blackfriars Road first, we're hugely supportive of that scheme. We're putting in £2 million from our regeneration reserve, which will then be topped up from planning gain, and we're hugely supportive of it. It's a very good scheme. It's absolutely essential that it's needed. And the volumes of cycling traffic up there are absolutely immense. But this is a really good example of where improving cycling infrastructure and infrastructure for pedestrians as well isn't just good for those two, okay, modal shares or types of people getting around those two ways. It'll also have significant public housing with the regeneration work we're doing down Blackfriars Road, the new jobs, the hotels, new homes and commercial space. Then this all kind of fits together really well. On the Elephant and Castle and on Blackfriars and both of those, we've had quite a lot of input across the number of meetings we've had with Transport for London and Southwark Cyclists and as well-being of various people about these locations, and our officers have been working very closely with TfL, and we've been feeding in at every point through there. One of the things I'm particularly keen on at the Elephant, for example, is making the Elephant as safe as is possible for people that need to get around there and want to go around there. But it's also for people that even don't feel confident, where it might not be the most direct route, to have bypass routes around the Elephant and Castle, northern roundabout, peninsula as it will be when it's completed, so that it's as safe for people and it caters for, there's a cycling option for people of different skill levels and different levels of confidence. So we've worked very closely with Transport for London. It's their bit of road, but we're obviously putting in an awful lot of money through planning gain in the area to help pay for a lot of these changes. We've had a lot of influence both of those.
Sorry, you didn't quite answer my question. So my question was, I mean, it's a fantastic scheme. We know we're putting lots of money in. It's great, it's part of the whole Blackfriars Road regeneration. But how have you dealt with the issues that have been raised by, particularly by Southwark cyclists, actually, about some of the movements? Have you been supportive of Southwark cyclists? Have you made representations to TfL about the details? So I'm not talking about the overall concept of it, but where there is some tension about whether or not the detail is the right detail.
So on a number of points, I agree with Southwark cyclists and individual members of Southwark cyclists and the representations they've made. There's some points that we're not in agreement with them about what the best solution is. On Blackfriars Road, for example, there wasn't complete agreement initially about having the two-track segregation, but I think that position has changed now. I don't want to speak for another organisation, they can come and give evidence, I'm sure, but on individual things like that, we've worked with them, and where they want small changes made and other changes, we've worked with them on that. For example, the Elephant and Castle Northern Roundabout, we pushed for as much segregation as possible through there. Got some of the road markings changed, some of the signals amended as well, if I remember correctly. And as the designs are refined and as we move to the public realm, consultations are keen to talk to as many different people as possible. So it's working closely with them. So the cyclists are an amazing organisation, amazing people giving up a lot of their own free time. We don't agree on everything, but we're in broad agreement, I'd say.
Yeah, I think I just want to know sort of how we know that it's going to work, really, because I think you look through it and you think, oh, that's a good idea, that's a good idea, that seems like a good idea. And I just, when I'm not an expert on increasing the amount of people cycling, and I just wonder, like, where's the sort of evidence for the individual things? Was it through meeting with the Dutch and Danish? Did they tell you this works really well? And is there sort of evidence that the things that we're doing will work? And if so, what are the sort of the top 3 things that get people cycling, and are we doing it?
So a lot of the ideas in here have been done by other people. When we had the Dutch and the Danish over in the summer, they basically said all the infrastructure and all the things you need to know to get people cycling was invented 100 years ago. We just forgot it in the 50s and the 60s when private motor cars really took off. I'd say the main ones to get people cycling, you need direct routes that are safe and that feel safe. You need, particularly in London, particularly for people cycling to work, they need, there needs to be bike storage. Because if people haven't got places to store their bikes, where they're leaving, where they're visiting, and where they're going to, then it won't work. And I think we also need to, for want of a better word, normalise cycling. So the safe, secure routes there, in my mind, they're a mixture of segregation, where we've got busy, high-speed, high-volume roads. But when you don't have that, you can have filtered permeability and closing off some roads, which is what Hackney did, and one of the reasons why Hackney's got such high levels of cycling. Or you make it clear to motorists that in this particular area, it's more of a home zone, for example, so speeds are lower, and cyclists and pedestrians have priority, and that's what they do. In Amsterdam, when I was there at the weekend cycling around, I was on holiday and drove my wife around on a bike with a cycling expert on Friday, which was really good. And she wouldn't cycle. I didn't literally, she pedalled. Sorry. But it's a serious point there, because she'd never cycled in London, never in a million years. She got on a bike and felt perfectly comfortable cycling around Amsterdam, because it's clearly laid out, it's clear where people have got to be when they're cycling, and it's safe, it feels safe, more importantly. So it shows that it does work, and that's all the evidence from the continent. Really key thing we've got to do is normalise cycling, because over the last few years, there's a certain perception, you've got to be lycra clad, whizzing around on your 5-grand racing bike. And there's a bit of aggression that's built up between some cyclists and motorists, and some cyclists and pedestrians. And we just need to get rid of that altogether and get to the point where you're not a cyclist or a motorist or a pedestrian, you're just a person getting around. In this particular case, your bike's the best way to get there. So changing that culture is going to take quite a long time, I think, but we've got to start somewhere. I'm confident those 3 main things will get there. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, following from Carl's point, actually, first thing I wanted to say was to congratulate you and the officers, because the strategy looks fantastic. I am concerned that as many people in the community as possible take advantage of this and benefit from this. So, following your points that you've answered, Carl, I just wondered if you or any of the officers have been thinking about how we communicate that to the widest audience possible. And the other thing I wanted to add, really, I thought about how many councillors actually cycle, because I remember when we had a preview of this, I was thinking, well, I cycle, but I wanted to cycle even more. And really, we should be leading by example. So I kind of know how many councillors cycle, I think now. But the question for the office, really, what percentage of the council workforce are cycling? And how can we, give them more incentives to get on their bikes, literally? So thank you.
If I answer the first question, if the officers can think about that and jump in if I've got an answer when I've finished the first part. So I think the communications and letting people know what we're doing, whilst within the consultation, we're going to work up, hopefully through all the groups and people we speak to, we'll build a good database of people that are interested in cycling. But when the final strategy is completed, we're going to be working with schools, with tenants associations, with faith groups, with as many different people as possible to get the word out there and get the message out there and get as many people cycling as possible. People with all different, socioeconomic backgrounds, different ethnic backgrounds, people with different sexes, people of all ages, to make it work. I think the schools are a really key way. And I can't remember who said it to me, but they said when you get the kids cycling, when parents feel comfortable with their children cycling to school, then you know you've cracked it, basically. So that's one thing that we need to be looking at and working with the schools. For example, the Dulwich Safe Routes to School partnership, where we fund an officer. We put in a bid to Transport for London for £2 million to do more work. We've got about 10,000 school kids moving around Dulwich every day. Unfortunately, TfL have written back and said we're not going to get that money because they want to put more of the money into the Quiet Way programme. My response, I haven't formally written back yet, but my response is going to be, Quiet Way programme is brilliant. We want money, the Dulwich Safe Routes to School programme, because it's the hard infrastructure changes, but it's also the education and all the training that goes around. You need to do both in tandem. So it's kind of pushing it that way and doing it through the schools. Any officers want to jump in? Oh, no, as a council, we're going to be an exemplary cycling employer.
So, officers, how many of you cycle?
He does. I don't think we've got a recent survey of officers.
We can find out and get back to you. But we want as many staff to cycle as possible, and we want as many councillors to cycle as possible. And if anyone wants to come on a cycle tour with me, I'm more than happy to take you on one.
Right, Steve.
Thanks.
And who's the first one?
Yeah, thank you. Sounds like you get dragged. Just on that, there used to be a very good bike to work scheme, which you might want to look at again. Councillor Thornton went on about it a lot, so it would be very nice if we could get that done. I was just going to make a few general points, if that's okay. Firstly, I don't think there's much in this you could disagree with. I think it's all very good, all words, and so that's great. As you know, my council group led 2 summits over the last 4 years. We had members of the Party Parliamentary Group on cycling. We had representatives from the GLA. We put forward a motion to council saying, please look at every road. So I'm really glad that's happening. And certainly lots of the stuff that we've been talking about, things like looking at council as an employer and stuff seems to be in there. So hopefully in the spirit of cross-party consensual stuff, some of what we've said has been listened to. My big concern is one of the things we've really gone on about is segregated cycle lanes. As you may remember, we had a big battle with the leader of the council who said they weren't the answer. Then he decided they were the answer. We still haven't actually seen segregated cycle lanes coming through the council, and that's something that really concerns me. I think the other thing that troubles me a bit about this is, I think your colleagues have actually touched on that, some of it's a bit vague, but the 2 projects that are particularly mentioned, which are the Crystal Palace Parade and East Dulwich Grove, they're actually pre-existing schemes that are, I understand, partly funded by TfL. So in terms of actual new stuff, I'm not sure there's much in here other than the spine. And even the spine is a little bit vague about timescales and about how segregated it will be. And I'd really like to explore whether it could actually be fully segregated. In terms of timescales, I think you said in your introduction, we want to crack on and deliver. I just wondered actually when we would see some segregated cycle lanes. And then linked to the segregated point is around the Aylesbury. I know you've made some commitments in the local press about making sure there are segregated lanes there, and I think the latest plans haven't produced any. So I suppose to round up specifically the Aylesbury question, but also just about fully segregating routes, about what new projects there would actually might be in addition to the spine, and really try to pin you down on some timescales.
Okay, in the spirit of cross-party working, it's good that there's broad buy-in from all the main political parties into increasing cycling as modal share, which is really good. Get a bit more money from central government, they stop cutting it, that'd be quite nice as well, so that can be fed back. On the strategy, particularly on the bike to work scheme, absolutely, we're looking at whether that can be brought back or not, because we need to become an exemplary employer. That includes facilities to staff, adequate cycle parking, etc. But it's also opening up to as many staff as possible, so I think you're on that. On segregation, isn't in itself the only answer to pushing up cycling rates. As I said in my introductory comments, where we've got fast moving traffic or high volumes of traffic, we need to look at segregation. That will include some of the areas that are on the spinal route. We are, as I said earlier, as a council, putting £2 million in towards the segregated cycle lanes on Blackfriars Road. It's a TfL road, but we've put £1 million there. We're also, at the Elephant and Castle, putting significant amounts of our planning gain money into those transport improvements, which do include segregation. So I kind of don't quite agree with the point that we're not doing it. And there are other examples in the borough where it's being put in, for example, the double roundabout that you mentioned. With segregation, it's, I mean, and the Dutch say this themselves as well, where you get high volume, high moving traffic, high speed traffic, you segregate. But in quiet home zone areas, you don't. You make it clear through the design of the road, the feel of it, the road surface that you use. They use a lot of bricks in Amsterdam, for example. You slow it down and you make it clear that this is a place for people, not a place for cars. So it really is different solutions for different types of roads, which is why we're doing this review of all of the roads in the borough. Hackney, for example, one of the highest cycle rates in London, one of the ways of it is through filtered permeability schemes of closing roads off to through traffic and making it safer for cyclists, and that's been a huge success. You speak to Councillor Mercy, who's my opposite number over there, and she gets criticised for not embracing segregation on every road, but for them they've found actually filtered permeability schemes do work, and we're going to be looking at that approach as well. But we are also looking at segregation, and where it's proven that it can work and where we can afford it and it's costed and we can fund it, and that will include some parts of the spinal route where it's needed. We will put segregation in. We just want to completely put an end to something that's been in the press in the last few weeks that somehow the council is anti-segregation. That's not the case whatsoever. Where it's proven that it can work, where we've got high volume, high speed traffic, where we can fund it, we'll put it in. We're not against it per se. As a cyclist myself, I want the Old Kent Road segregated from top to bottom. I cycle up and down it every day. High volume, high speed traffic as part of the opportunity area work there, which we might come onto in the next session. We want to be looking at segregation down the entire length of that road, full stop. On borough roads, as I said, on the spinal route, for example, we're going to be working at the plans there where it's possible, where segregation is not needed because there's low traffic speeds and low traffic volumes, then we won't need to segregate. But in some places, Thurlow Street is an example, going through the Aylesbury estate, I think in honesty, we're probably going to have to segregate down there. But we're going to be looking at that and working at the detail, which coming onto the Aylesbury. As you know, there's a master plan that's just been submitted with the detail for phase 1B1C, which is there around Bradley, Chiltern and Chartridge. That will be judged against existing policy, as you'd expect it to, by planning committee. But when the detailed phases come in for phases 2 and 3, which is Wendover and Taplow, which are the areas in phase 4, which is around Gatehurst and Missenden, comes in, which covers most of Thurlow Street, our policy will have moved on at that point. You know, the cycling strategy will be adopted. That route, the spinal route, is in there, and that will reflect in the new sort of plan. So we'll expect detailed plans when they come forward to reflect that. But the master plan that's being put in now reflects current policy, and Notting Hill Housing are aware, and they're very conscious of the fact that we're going to be expecting high levels of cycling provision in the future in that area. With regards to Albany Road, which is to the south of the Aylesbury estate, which has also been raised, we are looking at what the options are down there, but Albany Road is going to be significantly transformed from the road it is now. The red line boundary for the master plan deliberately takes in the very top thin strip of Burgess Park, because we want Albany Road to feel and look like a park road rather than the road that it is now. It's going to be significantly widened, significantly narrowed. I couldn't remember the Earl. I was waiting for someone to chime in. What it is. It's going to be significantly narrowed. The looking for that's going to be very different, but rather than segregation as an option on Albany Road. The thing to remember with Albany Road is the vast majority of the Aylesbury estate along there is phase 4, which isn't going to come forward for another 10 or 12 years. So we need to be looking at what we can do in the interim, and that gives us enough time to plan what we do with Albany Road in the long term. So that's where we are there, but there are going to be lots of filtered permeability and cut through routes through the Aylesbury master plan as it currently is, and ensure that when the detailed phases come in for 2, 3 and 4 in the next few months and years, that they will reflect our existing policy of the day. So it's kind of a lot's happening in cycling policy across London at the moment. You've got the draft London cycle design standards from the Mayor, you've got the Mayor's Road Task Force, you've got our own work, you've got the quiet ways coming through, the cycle superhighway consultations. There's a lot happening. and it's kind of new developments keeping up with policy as it emerges is difficult, but we will get there, and this is why we want to take this coordinated approach. That's the question.
Not at all. It just is lots of looking at options and not committing to segregation.
There will be segregation on some borough roads that we own and control in the borough. Some of those will be on the spinal route, but we're working at the detail. On timescales, we're going to adopt a strategy in March of next year. We're going to work at the detail for the Cllr spine, and I'd hope that we get it delivered in 2 years' time, there or thereabouts.
So we might see a segregated cycle lane on some roads in 2 years.
Well, you'll see them before then, because there's work on Blackfriars Road and at the Elephant and Castle. But if there's, as the cycling strategy consultation says, if there's specific roads you'd like us to look at, please let us know, and we can work this into the programme. It's as simple as that. This is us saying to the residents of the borough, if we're going to get to this 10% target, if we're going to unlock all the benefits of cycling to as many people as possible, we will need to segregate on some of our busy roads. Let us know where those are.
Sorry,
That's
just one.
one.
Thank you very much. If your consultation comes back and everyone says, sorry, councillor, you're wrong, actually it is segregated cycle lanes that would make us feel safe everywhere, will you commit to segregated cycle lanes?
We're not going to segregate every single road in the borough, because we've got how many 100 kilometres of roads in the borough? If you can find us a magic pot of £1 billion to pay for that, please do. But I've already said that there will be segregation on some of our roads, and we're working on the spinal route as the first part of that. And then as more money becomes available, we'll do more. But we're taking a fully planned approach to driving up cycling rates in our borough. And we want to hear what the people of the borough have to say about that, and where those routes could be.
Thank you. Now,
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a real shame, actually, some comments about Aylesbury, because we've seen groups come onto the estate and actually take over individual sessions that are meant to be about rehousing options. So,
hang on. Let's
Sorry,
hear
he's saying some
one
groups
councillor at a time, please.
I'm not suggesting, I'm not naming any names, actually, Councillor Samuel. I'm just saying that, and I know Councillor Williams is on board with this, but we need to remember that actually a lot of these decisions have to involve residents, not just perhaps usual suspects. And as you know, the Aylesbury is going to be one of the biggest regenerations in the borough, and we need to work with the people that are actually living there now and will be living there in 15, 20 years' time. So I would just reiterate my general appeal that actually Aylesbury residents have to be part of these decisions as well, not just entering into a borough-wide battle about segregation, which I understand it will be a key part of those plans. Moving on, Chair. You said in your comments, Mark, that the most important thing is a direct route. And I think in the past, the reason why it's not worked is literally these routes go round the houses. So I just wondered if you do get sort of individual ward complaints about where the quiet way might go, how you will sort of stick to the letter of it being a direct route.
Okay. Just on the Aylesbury, completely agree. We need to make our roads as safe as possible and take representations from across the borough. And you go from outside the borough, cycle through, but at the end of the day, with the Aylesbury in particular, I'm sure we'll come to this in the next session, it has to work for the residents that live there. And that's absolutely at the heart of it. At the last creation meeting, which I chaired, some of the residents and tenant trustees were very unhappy that they had a public consultation meeting to talk about rehousing options and the design of the estate and where people were going to be living. And it was kind of taken over and became a session on cycling, which they weren't happy about, and there's other places where that could happen. So completely agree with those points, but it's getting that balance, and it's absolutely about taking the residents with us, but it's also making sure the infrastructure works for people across our borough, which is a delicate balance. I think we're just about getting that right, but yeah, it is delicate, particularly the Aylesbury and how many times it's stalled, how long has it been promised for, 18 years, we're up to now, and finally delivering, or continuing with the delivery, so completely take that point. On direct routes, yeah, cycle routes, whether they're quiet ways or cycle superhighways or our spine route, have got as direct as possible if people are going to take them. The other point is if you don't design something properly as a direct route, people will just ignore what you do, but go the way they're going to go anyway, because that's human nature. So on the quiet way proposal, the current quiet way consultation is 2 sites in particular that have had correspondence from ward councillors, one in Chaucer, one in South Bermondsey Ward, Grange Ward. We're looking at making changes there that reflect the local residents' views, but maintain as much as possible the directness of the route. So it's yeah, it's listening to local residents. And I think if we're going to go back to the earlier point I made about normalising cycling, it's not about forcing through infrastructure changes on people saying this is what you're having tough. You know, this is what we've decided at 2 Street or TfL at Palestra, this is what you're having. It's about saying these are the best designs we think we've got. What do you think, local residents? Making amendments when needed, but maintaining that directness of making it work. There's a couple of sites in particular. We haven't finalised the final drawings yet, but one of the options we've made is there's some concerns about cut-throughs by mopeds, and motorcyclists. The example is that we're looking at putting in automatic number plate recognition cameras that automatically find people that go through. We've had trials in other parts of the borough and they've been hugely successful. So we're looking at that kind of mixture of amending designs and enforcement where needed to meet the concerns of residents.
Okay, I've got Claire and Tom for another go. I'm gonna then finish on that point. We spent 45 minutes on this item already. I've got nobody else indicating at the moment. So Claire. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark, and congratulations to you and officers. It's a very ambitious and clear strategy, and thank you for your commitment to balancing the needs for this to be a fully accessible route with particular needs of residents in Chiltern Wood and elsewhere. I think the strategy rightly identifies the financial barriers to cycling. It's not free, and I'm glad it recognises that. An important part of that is keeping your bike securely. So a common experience in London is get a bike, it gets nicked, and you never cycle again. Could you just say a little bit more about your objective 3.3 about aiming to provide and facilitate secure cycle parking for every home? I mean, that's a real issue on estates in my ward, certainly. What can people expect to see and when on that point?
So if I touch on new builds and then existing stock. So on new build, the new civic plan, which is out for consultation at the moment, has much higher cycle parking provision thresholds than even the mayor's for alterations to London plan have in there. Yeah, so we want developers to provide that. And one of the, I think it's Councillor Flynn raised with me at a previous meeting that in the block, I think we live, there's arguments in more because there's not enough cycle space provision, and that's a case study I use with every developer that I talk to and say you've got to put it in because there's been fisticuffs in Camberwell. Apart from that, Camberwell's beautiful. So absolutely on new build. It's also where people are going to visit as well. So for example, our leisure centres, outside shops, town centres, and a bit more difficult with the space set aside. We're looking at bicycle hangers for street properties. If people want them, we'll look at putting those in, and some of those can be paid for through Clean Green Safer. And we'll look if we've got some funding within my budget for that. Also, there's more detail in that in the final strategy. We're also looking for estates, the bike lockers. We've got 550 ish out at the moment, and we're looking at the usage rates of those to drive the usage rates up as high and get them to 100%, and then look at putting in more where possible. It's also looking at potentially in some places in the borough, do we need to look at having some kind of central secure cycle storage facilities for people? So we'd be interested to see what comes back through the consultation. If there's any specific sites, let us know. It will be tricky to get them, and it will be a challenge to get them for every single property in the borough, but we want to aim from cycling up to as many people as possible, so it's trying to get it in there. And obviously on private properties, people have more flexibility to install their own devices, we might be able to help with that.
Okay, quick questions from Tom and then Adele.
Thanks, Chair. Very quick one. On page 44, it talks about some of the amazing gains in terms of retail sales that are possible from cycling over driving. And just with that in mind, I wondered, with this route, have you identified how this will enhance the chance of local business to pick up some of that, and whether or not this might actually create new areas for business as well on this route?
No, but we will. That's a brilliant suggestion, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on Councillor Garfield's point about Aylesbury, you said that this isn't just about the cycling and the segregation, but whether it just suits cyclists, but you were talking to residents. Will you also be affording the same level of consultation, response and inclusivity or whatever to the residents on and around the TfL superhighway? Because obviously there are a lot of residents in Blackfriars Road who are worried about how it will impact on them, especially trying to get to the bus stop, trying to cross the cycle lane to get to the bus stop. So will you be working with the residents on Blackfriars Road in the same way that you've just described you'll be working with them on the Aylesbury?
Yes, my understanding is officers have had meetings with residents already in South Councillor, Morrison, if there's any particular groups or tenants you'd like me to come and talk to and walk the route with them and officers to look at where there's potential particular issues that need to be picked up to make safe crossings of the cycle route, then I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay. So, in the grand tradition of councillors wanting to raise meetings that cover the whole borough, I just wanted to add in, and I hope specifically cover the cycling strategy. It is a Peckham Rye issue where which is the best ward in the borough, as we all know, and the cycling, the park and common, the cycle paths is basically non-existent, and it is quite dangerous in some areas on both the west and the east sides of Peckham Rye Common. It's an issue that Southwark cyclists have rightly focused in on and have suggested having a cycling path down there. And I think there is the space available to both have a path on both sides, which doesn't impinge upon the common, which obviously is crucially important, but which does allow the space for cyclists to go down those routes safely, which at the moment basically they can't, and that is raised with us regularly as ward councillors. So I'll just be looking to you for a commitment to look very seriously at that suggestion and try and secure the funding in order to get that.
We shall look at that, and I'll raise you, because I think we also need to look at in that area of the world the route that goes from Nunhead Lane going east towards East Dulwich, because that's a route that I cycle quite a lot as a Nunhead resident. That's not particularly safe, so we need to look at that whole area around the common. So we certainly will do that and see what's possible with the space limits and then the bus routes as well. But we'll have a look at that certainly. But you can fill in the consultation drop.
Okay, but as this is formally part of the consultation, it'd be great if we could just to go over some of, I think, the main issues that have been raised by committee members this evening. And this is kind of minuting Peter. I don't formally pass this on to the cabinet in any way, but the main issues that I think have come out of the discussion are for the strategy to fully address the bike to work scheme, which was previously in existence. So take another look at that. An ongoing focus on segregated cycle schemes as well. That is fully addressed, which is something you mentioned as well this evening. What level of cycle segregation there is around the Aylesbury, and the inclusion of local residents in any of those decisions that are made around that. Bike security at home as well, which I think is already in your discussion document, but I think that's a crucially important issue. And the issue about retail gain and business gain as a result of encouraging more cycling, and of course finally the issues about as well. So if we could ensure they are fully covered in the strategy, then I think that's our kind of opening shot on that, and maybe we can have another discussion about how we might want to look at this again. But I think it's that's been very useful for them, so thank you.
Thank you. And if there's any, I encourage all members to let all your tenants, community groups know about this, and if there's anything you want us, either myself or officers, to come and speak to during the course of the consultation, with a particular focus on people who don't cycle, we'll get that booked in.
Okay, we are going to be moving on to the cabinet member interview with somebody called Mark Williams very, very shortly, but I suggest we have a 5-minute break before we move on to that item. Okay, thanks. Right. We're going to move on to the cabinet member interview in a moment. Just before we do that, I just wanted to update you on one other issue. You'll recall that back at the start of the municipal year, one of the things that I wanted to initiate was OSC engaging with the staff of the council in order to identify other scrutiny issues that we might want to look into. Now, you'll have seen the email that eventually went out after some wrangling from me to every member of staff, asking them to come back to us with suggested items. And I have to say, I'm really glad that we did it, because it has come back with some really interesting responses. We've had about 48, 50, I think it is, so far. There's some discrete little issues that I think just need following up on, not necessarily through scrutiny, but will need following up on. But just wanted to give you a quick update on the issues that have come back through that. The two main ones that have come back are, might not be surprising to you, but 28% of the people who responded raised IT, the council's IT, as an issue. Now, even just as a councillor working, yeah. Well, I think when you don't even mention an issue, when you send out an email like that, and then you get a good chunk of people coming back with exactly the same issue, and not only the number of people, but the strength of feeling, because obviously you're just asking people to write. It is people saying things like, I'm sick of excuses. This, enough is enough, and doing their job. So. I mean, just that, I think, means that we do, as a committee, have to come back to that issue and take a look. Now, the timing is going to be interesting, because there's going to be a switch over to a new system happening in the next few weeks. But I would suggest that at some point, fairly quickly after Christmas, we need to have a look at that again and call it in and get the officers in to explain exactly what's happening, get somebody from the council in to explain exactly what's happening, because at the moment, it is absolutely ridiculous situation. I don't think you find anybody trying to defend it. So we need to look into that. The other issue that did come up, probably about 8 to 9 responses, was people suggesting, council officers suggesting we look again at housing repairs, which is already being investigated by the Housing Scrutiny Committee. So I don't suggest that we take a look at that, but just to let people know that that is something that staff themselves have also identified. So just a quick update on that, and now we will move quickly on to the cabinet member interview for Cllr Mark Williams. Now, Mark, again, the usual form is for us to ask you to give an introduction on your portfolio. Feel entirely free to miss out cycling from your from your introduction, but it'd be good to get some information from you about how you see the main challenges in your portfolio. And there are some specific issues that were on our agenda tonight that we want to get a response from you on, in particular on the Elephant Castle shopping centre. But we can come to those specifically in a moment. So over to you for a quick intro.
Yeah, so I can take that as bread, although I can talk about it another hour. So the rest of my portfolio. I think one of the main things I see my role as doing is to bring to get as many new homes built in the borough as possible, as many new affordable homes built in the borough as possible, get as many people into work in the borough as possible, and to make Southwark through regeneration schemes, through the planning process, and through the other parts of my transport portfolio, is to make Southwark a nicer place to live for everybody in our borough, full stop. We've obviously got the public health duties, which have just come over to recently came over to the council. It's about putting public health at the heart of generation schemes, planning policy and transport policy. One area I'll just touch on a little bit more detail on that is the Mayor's proposed ultra-low emission zone, which is currently out for consultation, which is due to come into effect in 2020. And the Mayor's office are consulting on doing this and being basically determined as a congestion charge zone, because the cameras are there basically. My view, Southwark's view, and there's three of the central London boroughs, Camden, Hackney and Lambeth. We're calling for the ULEZ to be significantly larger, which is obviously banning time, most heavily polluting diesel vehicles, which kill about 130 people a year in our borough, 4,000 across London. So that's one area where I think that's key. We can use transport policy to help literally clean up the air in our borough and stop people being killed prematurely. So that's one area. but I think it's continuing to get that investment and get the homes built. As people know, we're in the grips of a housing crisis in London, and we're doing everything we can do, and we need to continue doing that to get as many new homes, high quality homes built in this borough as possible, and as many affordable homes as possible, and as many council homes built as possible in that borough. Because that's the only way we're going to tackle the housing crisis. We're currently about 1,600 units a year, and we need to continue on that, build more. We need every other London council to be doing the same.
Okay. I haven't got anybody indicating at the moment, so I'd just like to come specifically onto the question which is in our papers on regeneration projects. Would the Cabinet update the committee on progress in respect of regeneration in the Elephant and Castle shopping centre? So if you could give us a formal response to that.
Of course. Delancey, who are the owners of the shopping centre at the moment, they are currently at consultation and working at their detailed plans for the future of the shopping centre site, and we're expecting that to come forward early part of next year, spring next year. And obviously we want that to be a development that works and fits in with the wider regeneration of the Elephant and Castle. It's obviously a key location within that. Also the setting of the shopping centre and how that sets off the new peninsula, make sure that ties together well. We're basically waiting for Delancey's plans to come forward, and to make sure that they fit in with the new parks that Lendlease are currently building in the Market Square, and that it all flows through, and that the transport links improve, particularly for the Northern Line. We had the announcement a couple of weeks ago that we're going to get £153 million from Transport for London for transport improvements in and around the Elephant and Castle, including the Northern Line station, which is a key part of the Delancey site. And I think that's really a testament to the work of all of our officers, in particular I'd say that Chief Executive, Eleanor Kelly, the leader and Councillor Colley, because the original position from TFA is that we wouldn't get a penny. We've managed to get £153 million towards that. So that's the transport side. On Delancey's plans, we're waiting for those to come forward, and then we can sort them when they do.
Could you just come to the issue about the existing retailers in the Elephant and Castle shopping centre? There's been some concern voiced by those retailers about the level of engagement and level of anxiety that they're going through at the moment. Could you just address that?
Certainly. So the anxiety is understandable. There's an awful lot going on at the Elephant and Castle and the shopping centre looking forward for redevelopment. So that's understandable. I've been written to by a number of the shopkeepers and retail units at the Elephant and Castle shopping centre. What I said to them and what I say to the committee is, at the end of the day, our role in the shopping centre is as a planning authority. It's owned by Delancey, they're the landlord, and they've got a landlord leasing relationship, which is for them to manage. It's not for us to manage. But one thing that we've made clear to Delancey, and we've said to them repeatedly, it's the same that we said to Lendlease, it's the same that we say to any other developer in the borough, is redevelopment. You have to engage with the people that either live there or currently operate from there as a retail unit. And the development's got to work partly for them in the long run. You've got to work with those businesses to make sure they can transition across and find a new home in the future. We've made that very clear to Delancey. They understand that, and they're working through their plans as we speak. If there's particular issues with the management of the centre, I'm sure that they're more than happy to answer those. But that's, at the end of the day, the regeneration of the Elephant and Castle isn't about clearing away the people that are there at the moment. It's about providing new homes for people there, but it's also making sure that the retail and shopping offer isn't just the same as everywhere else that we've got in various new developments in different bits of London, different bits of the country. And a key part of that, for example, is working very closely with the Latin American businesses at the Elephant and Castle. I had a meeting with them 2 weeks ago, and we're doing a site visit very shortly. Because that's absolutely key in finding those businesses a new home and suggestions which we're looking at. But it's a very difficult process. It's very obviously challenging, and as I say, I completely understand shopkeepers and individual retailers' concerns. We've made it clear to them that they need to work with them.
Yeah.
Just a question on diversity, really. I mean, I really think, obviously everyone in the room will agree, that Southwark must be one of the most exciting places to live right now. You know, I'm so proud of all the regeneration projects, not just the Elephant, but right across the piece, really. But one of the things, I'm asking this to you, Councillor Williams, but I know that it's quite close to your heart, how we maintain diversity of Southwark in everything that we do in new regeneration projects. But I think you know, it's something that we, you know, have to consider really and look at all the time, because where I live, you know, the lane, we've got that regeneration project around the station. And, you know, by day, you know, when you go to the children's centres and everything we do, it's very mixed and integrated. And then, you know, all of a sudden you feel that, you know, for example, I went to a nursery the other day, and my children are the only mixed race children in the nursery, and I asked them, how did this happen? And they weren't sure. You know, the people who run it, they said it was totally the other way before. So I think, you know, while we're doing this, we can't really take our eye off that ball really to make sure that we get it, you know, as diverse as possible.
I completely agree, in using the Peckham Gateway Peckham Station project as an example with the co-design process that's just coming to an end now. Ash Cllr, who we appointed, doing a brilliant job, but we made it very clear to them that it's not just about speaking to people who travel through the station and the shopkeepers. It's going out, pounding the streets and knocking on the doors of the nearby estates to make sure that people from as many different backgrounds who live close by have an input into that process, and that's something we made very clear, and that's something that we live by in every generation project. We talked about the Aylesbury estate earlier. It's exactly the same. Yeah, so that's at the heart of what we're doing. It's got to work for the residents who live in the borough now for it to work long term. And just moving it around to the Aylesbury, we've got to learn mistakes of the past and make sure that what we build now lasts for the long term. So our successes in 30, 40, 50 years aren't having to come back, tear it down and rebuild it. We need to get it right. I believe you get it right by talking to people that live, work and shop there and visit there, and get their views because they know the place is better than anyone.
Okay, Tom.
Okay, to move on in terms of subject.
Yeah, of course, yeah. I don't know.
With apologies if it sounds a bit Camberwell.
That's fine.
But I think that, you know, one of the areas that we talked about today on the agenda was the Bakerloo line extension, and obviously there's two potential routes for that. But as cabinet member with Southwark committed to vote, will you join the march on the 29th, which is coming through Camberwell, in favour of that route? But more seriously, really, whether we get the Bakerloo line or not to that part of the borough, it's going to take a long, long time. And I was wondering if there are other things in that might be planned to ease pressure on the transport network in the meantime, anything to do with, for example, buses along Walworth Road or reopening the Camberwell station.
Yes, I'll be on the 29th. We support both routes personally as a council and as a Labour group. We support two routes, the Old Kent Road route and the Camberwell and Peckham route. We think there's a good case for both, and both are needed. Our area of South East London has been historically poorly served by the Underground, which we all know, and this is an opportunity to set that right, and that's going to be our formal consultation response back, which closes on the 7th of December. And I hope you all do the same. We want both, and yes, I'll be on the 29th for the route through Camberwell as well. As a Camberwell council, obviously keen to see that come through and understand the need for it. And we want both routes, that's absolutely key. On whether if the route comes to Camberwell or not, and time frames, I think it's key that Camberwell station is reopened, and that's something we're going to be asking for as part. We asked for it as part in our response to the Mayor's 2050 infrastructure plan. We'll be asking for it again in our Bakerloo line consultation response, because there is an opportunity there. The station closed 1918, I think, 1920 odd, and there's a case for it to come forward and be reopened absolutely. And there's an opportunity with the Super Thameslink franchise. They're going to be announcing the timetable for that in about 3 years' time. 2017 is my understanding, so we've got a bit of time to influence the timetabling arrangements, which will be key. And I've just allocated some of my LIP discretionary fund to do a review and an analysis of the timetabling implications for trains coming from further outside of London and out of outer London, on what the timetabling implications would be, because that's one of the common arguments that's thrown back at us. You can't do it or delay commutes from outside of London. And we want to be able to prove that actually it won't, and actually there's a huge need for it locally. So we're starting to do that background work now to try and win that argument with the TfL. And obviously from a bus point of view, when the argument got the 136 route extended from Peckham up to the Elephant and Castle, on overcrowding on Walworth Road in particular, I think if we can get that train line reopened, that'll ease some of the pressure down the Walworth Road in particular for the buses.
Right, now I've had, by the end of this interview, we'll have every member of the committee wants to ask a question, which is fine, but I'm not going to take any secondary questions now, so over to Claire.
Thank you, Chair. Mark, can I ask about pedestrians and road safety and the experience of people walking to work and to school? It's a particularly challenging environment around the elephant tragic death of a young boy a couple of years ago, and a really challenging experience for people walking east to west, for example, from the town line and Rockingham over to the cluster of primary schools in Crinkles Ward. What will we be doing to improve that experience? It's about road crossings, it's about becoming a fully 20-mile-an-hour borough. It's about the time you get to cross the road, which often isn't enough for anyone with any kind of accessibility challenge, or even if not, it's often not enough time. What are we going to be doing to change that experience?
I think I've got down those 4 questions. On the 20-mile-per-hour borough, rollout's happening as we speak, and that'll be completed by Christmas this year. And then there's a pot of money set aside, about £800,000, if I remember correctly, and Des is nodding, about £800,000 has been set aside, that when we do the review for a year of 20 mile per hour being operational, we'll look at those areas where average traffic speeds are above 24 miles an hour and look at what physical interventions we can make to change the look and feel of the roads and slow it down. We're also going to be working with the Metropolitan Police to try and get them to enforce. We know they've got limited resources. The Met's lost about 500 million out of its budget. We understand that, but we don't expect them to. We know they don't have the resources to enforce every road in the borough, but we want them to, at the very least, enforce on those hot spots and where we know those sites are dangerous. One, for example, off the top of my head is Denmark Hill, coming down that big sweeping road, which is on the border of Southwark and Lambeth through my ward, through Campbell Green ward as well. Places like that, and where we're getting the data that average speeds are above that 24 miles an hour, the physical changes, but also to see if the police can enforce. On road crossing times, unfortunately, we can't change them without TfL's permission. And as you know, the Mayor's got his policy of smoothing traffic, and the chance of us getting any road crossing times increased this side of May 2016, I would say it's 0, unfortunately. We'll keep on pushing only if there's particular sites known as Campbell Green, which Council has raised with me previously. If any particular ones you want us to look at, let us know, and we'll lobby TfL on those and try and win them on a case-by-case basis. But of course, we need more time for pedestrians to cross the borough. On improving walking routes in north of New Kent Road, Rockingham going across, we're looking as part of the improvements at the Elephant and Castle, that there's 6 parks dotted around the opportunity area, and we're looking at investing, or parks are looking at investing about £6 million into those, so we can look at part of that if there's any potential green links that we can look at as well. And obviously Lend-Lease have got the 11 or 1,200 additional trees that they've promised to plant, or that they will plant in the Section 106 agreement as part of their development. So if there's any nearby and if there's any particular routes, we might be able to get some of those allocated to there. Improving the look and feel of the Elephant and Castle itself, the northern roundabout turning that into a peninsula, releasing some land by filling in the subways and the peninsula itself. There's going to be public consultation at the back end of this month with very high public realm threshold to completely transform the look and feel of the Elephant and Castle northern roundabout. So we're looking at spreading the benefits of regeneration. It's not just about homes and jobs and affordable homes. It's also about making the areas as nice as possible for the people that live there currently, and improving them. I think that was all of them.
Well, it follows up from the first point. Just a couple of things. Before the election, I know that there was a promise to have 2 extra pedestrian crossings on Borough High Street. So if you can come back to us on those, where they are, if you know, or if you can ask us. But also, on crossing on the New Kent Road, I've had a few people in my ward particularly talking about the accessibility of Elephant Park, the park in the redevelopment. I'm just making sure that, for example, from a Chaucer point of view, from the Rockingham, go to that park, it will be very close to them, and there's a bit of a concern from a lot of residents that it will feel closed, and I just want to know what steps we're taking to open it up and open up New Kent Road and make sure that that's people feel that they are actually close to.
Okay. On the 2 crossings, one of them is going to be done by summer next year, and the other one, the money's been allocated, but TfL won't do it. I'm trying to remember which way around it is. We can find out the details and get back to you, but they are one of the ones we're going to do next year. The other one, the money's allocated, but TfL won't do it, basically. And we can write with details on those. On the new park at Elephant Park, it's absolutely got to work for residents. North of the New Kent Road is on the Rockingham estate, because it is literally over the road. And we're looking at crossings on the New Kent Road. There's some discussion at the moment because it depends on on the final design of the redundancy scheme at the Elephant Castle Shopping Centre, for example, whether if any of the bus stands have to move, where we can move the crossings there. We're also looking at the cycle routes and the signalised cycle crossings and pedestrian crossings across the New Kent Road and the cycle routes through the wider Elephant Park redevelopment, but we're pushing for as many as possible basically. And from the point of view of the new park, it's got to work for the local area because it will be a destination park. I was on site this morning and had it kind of coned off so you can get a sense of the scale, and it's huge and it's going to be a huge benefit for the local area. I'm fortunate enough to sit on the Parks Advisory Group, which councillor seat in each ward council also sits on from the council, and John White from our Parks Department, and there's representatives from Lend-Lease and also 3 members of the local community, including one resident who's from the north of the New Kent Road, to make sure that those links fit in. In the long term, when it's all finished, it definitely will. The challenge is when the temporary park is completed, when we say from September 2016, because there's going to be a construction site around it, how we can get those cut through and those walkthroughs there that are safe for a construction site for people north of the New Kent Road, and we're still working through that now. We've got the next meeting of that group on Wednesday, and I'll raise it again.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, everybody knows that homes and jobs are the big thing, and we need both of those desperately, homes of all tenures and jobs, across the range. And we're consulting on the Southwark plan at the moment, and on page 4 of the Southwark plan, page 4, it says that basically all of this is up for grabs depending on the responses that we get. We can rewrite, put it here, I can read it out to you if you like. It says something about, it says this is an informal step of consultation, and all of the document can be changed at this stage and after the preferred option has been reached. And I was just wondering, really, how much of it could be changed and how much you're going to give weight to the concerns of residents. You talked a lot of talk about residents on the Aylesbury residents in Peckham regeneration area. You talk about how important it is that existing residents are part of the process and and that it benefits them. My most recent experience with planning policy documents was with the Blackfriars Road SPD, where the residents who wrote, I thought was very articulate and constructive comments and points that were completely ignored by cabinet member. Anyway, they were completely ignored, and so I want to know what's going to be different. How are you going to make it different with the Southwark plan? How are you going to give weight to the views of the existing residents of the borough and make sure that actually they are protected from the big developers who can use every trick in the book to get what they want?
Okay. Well, I'll just start off by saying I think Councillor Colley did a fantastic job when she's cabinet member for regeneration and planning on, continue that work. We can plan. Obviously, we put forward the policies that we're consulting on that we'd like to see happen. In the document itself, whilst anything can be changed depending on representations that we get, where we've got clear statements of intent without question marks, that's what we want to see happen. And where there are questions, those are genuine questions of asking people which one of these options you prefer. There's another one we haven't thought about. But any part of the document, if people have got particular questions or concerns about them, and they put forward a consultation response, and of course, as with any consultation, we'll look at those, and it completely depends on what comes back from the people of our borough, from residents of our borough and people that work here. I'm listening to local residents, and we'll continue to do that. We're not always going to get full agreement and full consensus in every area. As you know, from neighbourhood planning, for example, and the committee meeting when I was here, but not a month ago, if I remember correctly. And there's also, there's discussion over on the Rother Hythe Peninsula, and there's, disagreement amongst local groups there about what the neighbourhood plan should look like there. We'll consult and we'll listen to people, but at the end of the day, we've got a duty to deliver the homes and the jobs. We'll work with local residents to amend planning policy where possible and to get the best quality developments coming forward. But at the end of the day, we need to deliver jobs and homes, but balance that against what residents want. So it's always going to be difficult. We're never going to get 100% consensus in the local area. We obviously had quite a large election earlier this year, and people voted on our manifesto. We've got a mandate to deliver, which includes delivering more homes of all tenures, which we're now delivering against for the whole borough. but there'll always be local issues that will be difficult, and we'll listen to people as much as possible and amend plans where possible to reflect those, but there will be times when we don't get 100% agreement, but we will crack on and we'll see developments coming forward if we're going to tackle the housing crisis that I mentioned earlier, because building homes is the only way that we can tackle it as a borough. We're delivering a lot of figures in here. We're delivering about 1,600 homes a year at the moment. If every borough in London was doing that, we'd be getting about 53,000 new homes coming through each year. And the housing crisis wouldn't be as bad as it is now. So we'll continue with that track of work.
Thank you. Okay, Rosa.
I'd like to return to the issue of 20 mile an hour plans for having every road in the borough 20 miles an hour, if you don't mind. I suppose I have some concerns about whether self-enforcing 20 mile an hour zones are always necessarily going to be effective. And I think that this is backed up in I think there's Department for Transport guidelines, which also indicate that self-enforcing 20 mile an hour speed limits on roads where the average speeds are over 24 miles an hour aren't as effective. So I wanted to ask what, if any, monitoring have you and your team been doing of whether or not these speed limits are being kept to on roads which are currently 20 miles an hour, and what you will do to enforce the 20 mile an hour speed limit if it's found that they're not always being kept to.
Okay, there will be post-implementation monitoring, and as I said, where there's roads where the average speeds remain above 24 miles an hour, looking at what physical changes can be made, and there's been a budget set aside for that, so we can change the look and feel of the road so the speeds are reduced. On enforcement, as I said earlier, we want to work with the police, we want the police to enforce. We know they don't have the capacity to move across the whole borough, but certainly at the places where there's hotspots of infringements, we'd expect to see that happen. I was at a road safety reduction conference 2 weeks ago, which we hosted here, which the first time in the borough to do that. We take road safety very seriously. And there are representatives from the Metropolitan Police there, and they're about to over double the transport command, which includes road safety for the first time. It's going to be about 2,500 officers spread across London. And we're going to be meeting in due course with our borough commander to see if there's any of that resource that we can tap into for our borough for road safety for pedestrians and cyclists, but also on 20 mile an hour enforcement. I'd love to be able to speak on myself, but I don't think that's legal, unfortunately.
I have done that. Just on that, seriously, with buses, another road impacted by Rebecca.
Thanks, Jeff. Well, I wanted to talk briefly about the Old Kent Road and kind of understand what your vision is for it and how soon you think we're going to have any kind of plans coming forward. But in the meantime, what we're doing to help support the businesses that are there, make sure it's safe. And there's a lot of kind of street furniture that I know I've raised with you, my walk raised with you on a number of occasions, and kind of small things that we can be doing before we have some a more dramatic level of what's going on.
Okay, yeah, so individual issues like street furniture, we want to get it cleaned up as much as possible, improve the look and feel of the Old Kent Road. The Old Kent Road as it is now, our vision is to completely transform it. We want it to be, a green corridor across our borough. We want it to stop being the barrier that it is going east, west, and north, south in Southwark. If you look at it at a map, just to the south you've got Burgess Park, and just to the north you've got Southwark Park, but you never think that. So we need to look at, greening the area, and we're working up our initial plans now. We're working with the GLA, because it's one they're identified as an opportunity area, and we'll be coming forward for a consultation on the draft area action plan in due course. One of the first steps in that is that we're going to create a business atlas, and officers are going to go and knock on every single door in the opportunity area and find out who's currently operating and trading there, how many people are employed, what kind of business is it, what are their plans for the future. So while we've got an accurate understanding of what's happening at the Old Kent Road now, but so we've got a baseline so we know when it's complete that we have actually increased employment there. That's an absolutely key part of our plans for the Old Kent Road, increasing employment down there. So we do the plan consultation, we're looking at the preferred industrial locations, whether some of this can be moved or potentially shut down or have some kind of condensing that and having more efficient use of space. But one thing we've got to see is an increase of jobs down the Old Kent Road. And the first part of that is officers going around and speaking to everybody that's down there currently and finding out who's operating. Vision for the Old Kent Road in the future is a lot more homes, a lot more council homes, affordable homes, new green space, potentially new town centre, 2 tube stops when we get the tube extended down Campbell and Peckham on the Old Kent Road. We're also working with colleagues at Lewisham Council, which is obviously the border area, for their plans to decide to make sure that it all fits in together. Hopefully seen Surrey Canal Road Station open in the not too distant future, which should help transport connections down there, but it's going to be significant, and there's significant scope for a lot of new housing, new commercial, new retail, new town centre potentially down there, and we can look forward to the draft AAP early next year to see what the local community think about that and how that can be delivered. But it's about, sorry, Chair, so it's in a similar way the Elephant Castle and Blackfriars Road dragging that economic activity down and getting more people into work. It's exactly the same as the old Kent Road as well, because it's in a central London location. So historically, hasn't had the investment it needs, and we want to change that.
Very quickly.
Just in terms of kind of immediate things, do we have a plan in place to kind of look at things like street furniture, things in the meantime for the air action plan comes into place?
No, but we will come up with one, and we'll write to ward councillors in due course and what we're going to do on each of those points.
Great. So I've got Anu and then finally Dan.
Thanks, Chair. I've got two questions. One is really, really quick, which is just, I've emailed you a couple of times about the timescales for the London Bridge public realm planning, because I'm really concerned about missing a trick in terms of that. So just what's the timescales?
Yeah, no, so there is, top of my head, there's a decision has to be made so that the southern entrance to the station on St Thomas's Street can open by 2016, and we're looking at asking Network Rail for some public realm improvements, but because we're expecting more developments to come forward in the future down St Thomas's Street, we're looking at what additional changes can be made when those developments are complete, because there's no point putting a load of high quality public realm for disrupting traffic experience. So that's the immediate one, and I think we've got to sign off that condition end of this year.
We got the application, we need to sign it off, so
Maybe
we're still trying to come to an agreement between the different parties, TfL, Network Rail.
So that's the immediate one. For the longer term, looking at the link through Bermondsey Street travelling north and Tooley Street. Tooley Street is going to be closed off in 2016. It will be westbound only for 2 to 3 years to enable the improvement works at the station to be delivered. So it wouldn't be until those works are finished that any improved public realm around the station could be implemented. So we've got plenty of time to come up with our plans to make sure that we don't miss this opportunity. It's all got to link in together. And I've also allocated some money from my LIP discretionary fund. We're looking at working with Team London Bridge to do a study of Bermondsey Street, St Thomas's Street, Snowsfield, about what changes could potentially be made there to improve the public realm and pull as much economic activity down into Bermondsey as possible.
I might follow up with you on that separately, because I'm a bit concerned about what you said about immediate stuff, and again, just missing an opportunity there, but I'll do that. It's a bit of a board issue. Sort of wider question, I suppose, is I think we all share actually being absolutely desperate for affordable housing and council homes, and we all sit in the back surgeries, and our hearts break for people who've grown up in this and can't afford to live here. So I think we share that. We may disagree about how to get there, and I have a slight, every time you sort of say it has to be balanced between what existing residents want, alarm bells ring a little bit, because I don't think existing residents are opposed to new homes, and it came out a bit in the neighbourhood plan discussion that residents might be opposed to homes and jobs. I genuinely don't think they are. I think they absolutely want it, and I just think they sometimes share concerns about how we go about it as well. And I think the big concern comes from the fact that what they don't want is lots of luxury flats, and I understand the arguments about why we have to accept some in order to get cash out developers, but I think one of the problems that there's been over the last 4 years is those relations with developers and the way they've been portrayed in terms of what the council's getting out of those planning agreements and that kind of thing. I think it's very highlighted by the ongoing viability battle at the Haygate, where the council has effectively helped to defend developers trying to keep viability assessments confidential. I get where the council's coming from a lot, but I just think in terms of perception, it ends up looking like the council's not on the side of people who want affordable homes. And I have had worries, but my main worry my main worry about some of the viability stuff is it gets very technical, and I think that makes it difficult for people to understand why the council's supposedly covering up. This week, Simon Hughes put in a request, freedom of information request, which I don't know if you've had sight of at all, but it was basically asking for copies of correspondence between Southwark Council and the ICO. And part of the purpose of doing that is just saying what correspondence has there been, let's see it. And there's a response back from Southwark saying Southwark doesn't hold any correspondence which A seems very.
I knew we need to get to a
Yeah,
question
yeah.
here, so let's get to it.
Yeah, so not everyone in the room may know about the FOI request. I don't know if Councillor Williams does, so I suppose my first question is, does he know about it? And secondly, would he commit to having a look into it? Because it seems to me a strange answer to say there isn't any correspondence. It may be that the council's concerned, but surely there must be a way about being a bit more open about some of that, because I think that would really address some of the fears and concerns people have about those relationships with developers.
Thank you, Councillor. That's all right. I think just to kind of say, we've got an immensely strong record of delivering new homes and delivering new affordable homes of any borough. And then
Time, you might just want to answer the question.
I am answering all the many questions that you asked.
I just wonder about
Let's just let's hear from the cabinet members.
So in the last 3 years, we've built more affordable homes than any other London borough, full stop. We've got a very ambitious programme to build 11,000 council houses, first 1,500 by 2018. We are immensely serious about delivering the homes that are affordable to people who live in our borough now and are overcrowded on our estates. I went on a site visit last week to Cllr with the Chief Executive of Notting Hill Housing for their 30,000 building, which happens to be in our borough. With a couple who've been on our waiting list for 17 years, and you've never seen any happy people in your life. So proud of their new home. This morning on the former Haygate estate at Trafalgar Place, I went around and looked at one of the new homes that's going to be as part of the affordable housing provision on site. The spec in there is absolutely fantastic. So we're very serious and have a very, very strong track record of delivering affordable and genuinely affordable homes in our borough compared to other London boroughs. On the Haygate specifically, we've got a very good deal on site. There's a legal process that's ongoing at the moment with Mr. Glasspool and his legal representatives and Lendlease and ourselves. There's going to be another hearing, if I remember correctly, on the 11th and 13th of December. On the freedom of information request, I can certainly have a look at that, but obviously,
That's right.
but obviously any response to an FOI has to be done by the FOI Act, as the council does with all FOIs that come in. But I think just to pick up on one of the earlier points you made, start your question, Councillor Samurai, we do work very closely with local residents. We take on board their concerns. That's absolutely key, and we have to deliver the homes for them to address the overcrowding on our estates. We've got local lettings policy, for example, various other things coming forward for any local council homes and affordable homes that are coming forward. So any suggestion that we're not working with local residents, I don't take it all. And we stood on our record in May this year. We got a fantastic result in the local elections, and we'll be humble with that, and we'll continue delivering for our residents because that's what people want at the end of the day, and that's the message that we get on the doorstep every weekend we go out to talk to people.
Just on the FOI request, you said you'd look into it. Would you get back to me by email on that?
Yes.
Thank
you. Or I can send you. No,
okay, finally, Dan.
Well, you haven't replied previously.
Thank you, Chair. There have been a lot of worrying Camberwell-centric comments this evening, so I just wanted to...
It is the centre of the borough.
Yeah, well, a serious point. Walworth Road Station closed in 1916 at the same time as Camberwell Station. And obviously we're going to have a doubling the density of housing on the Aylesbury. And, at the moment it's a bus-only transport route. So I just really wanted to get a sense of how seriously you think the Network Rail TfL, if it is them, actually take the reopening of those two stations, because I think Camberwell, it does have access to Denmark Hill, and it has access to east-west routes as well, which Walworth Road doesn't on buses. So, yeah, just how seriously we're taking it and how seriously those organisations are taking it as well.
I was written to actually back end of last week and replied to the individual yet about transport provision and the consultation, the provision of Walworth. Obviously, yeah, we're going to get a lot more homes down there. There's going to be the transport improvements for the Northern Line station at the Elephant and Castle on the east side of Walworth, with the potential new tube stations on the Old Kent Road route. We're looking at the siting of those and how those could potentially help and release some of the pressure on the east side of the Aylesbury estate, for example, in the east part of East Walworth Ward. For the west part of Friday Ward and East Walworth Ward, we can take a look at the Walworth station option. I'm not sure we'd get both. We can look at that. We can also look at the siting of any potential tube station coming down the Camberwell and Peckham route, and whether potentially the station for Camberwell could be done a little bit further north. We're not at that point yet. We need to get agreement the line's going to go in. But when we get the agreement from Transport for London that we're going to get both routes, which hopefully we will, we can look at the siting of that station, see if we can potentially do it a bit further north to relieve some of that pressure on Woolworth. That helps.
Chair, is that I've got a commitment that you'll reopen all of those stations.
I'll get down and start the work. Councillor Garfield.
And thank you, Councillor Williams, for answering those questions. And that's the end of the coming over interview. Thank you for coming, and thank you to the officers for coming as well. And we will now move on, to John Tizard's presentation and interview.